it is the case that there has been a widening income disparity within the U.S. It is not clear that this has been happening on a global basis. If you look at the numbers of very poor people who've gotten a lot better off in China as well as India, it is not at all clear that global wealth disparities are increasing or decreasing. I think that's much more open to debate. But in the developed countries, there does seem to be quite a bit of pressure, especially on people in the middle class who are competing for jobs with people who are asking for much lower salaries. You know, so your car factory worker in Detroit versus the car factory worker in Shenzhen in China. Now, I think there are probably a whole set of different factors that are driving this. There's a technological shift from an industrial to an information age economy where knowledge is more important. There's probably a shift. There's a globalization aspect certainly which is a legacy of these massive disparities that have historically existed. You know, I think there's sort of a whole set of different factors to this. But I think you know, whatever the analysis is, you then have a very different set of questions as to what if anything one should do about it. And it seems to me that it would be a very big mistake to just end globalization. And this is sort of where the people who complain about globalization leading to greater disparities, why they've been so ineffective, at least thus far, politically, is because, you know, if you actually end globalization, this would be just an unmitigated disaster. And there's no logic, you know, there's no peaceful way to end it. You know, if you imagine getting together a group of anti-globalization activists and politicians at some sort of worldwide conference to bring about the end of globalization, I mean, this would have to be like a self-contradictory farce. Or perhaps perhaps the cover for some other version of globalization, such as for a worldwide communist revolution or something like that. And so I think globalization will not end by collective political action. It will not end by individual choice because it makes too much sense for individuals. The only way globalization will end is by world war, and that's how it ended in 1914, and that's the risk of how it could end again. And so I do think. I don't think there's anything automatic about it, but I think the alternatives are very terrible. I think one of the challenges is that we have to start by being honest with people, and we have to start by recognizing that, you know, a lot of these constituencies have expectations that are completely crazy, and so you know, the expectation that an unskilled worker in the U.S. should get paid 10 times as much as an unskilled worker in China who's willing to work twice as hard. This is a crazy expectation, and this is not really going to be sustainable at all. I tend to think there probably is a lot to be said for education reform. I'm somewhat pessimistic about re-educating adults. They seem to be often not very prone to being re-educated and get pretty set in their ways, which is unfortunate. So I think we have a problem with a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s in the U.S. where it's going to be very hard to shift things around. And so what I think we should try to do is focus on the next generation of Americans, make sure they get the best kind of education possible, where they will either get a broad education where they can sort of do things that are competitive professionally, or alternately get real vocational training where they can do sort of high value added jobs in building very complicated machines and things like that, of the sort that Germany and Japan have done better than the U.S. I mean, there's a lot screwed up in those countries, but I think that element of it they've done somewhat better. So I think that's probably where the focus should be. I think that one of the things that drives so much of the cultural fears about it is a sense that the next generation of Americans will be worse off than the one that came before, or at least that many people in the next generation will be worse off than their parents. And so I think if you can mitigate against that, that might ameliorate things a lot, might ameliorate things quite a bit.